Today I'm going to talk about a subject that, while everybody I think understands it, they don't necessarily fully get it in terms of how they're implementing it with their business. And we're going to be talking about growth. I've always felt that, businesses are either growing or dying. And that sounds kind of bold, but growth is something that, you need to define in your own way. Growth of a business that we'll talk about today, is really more on kind of what's your paradigm? How are you thinking about growth necessarily than just in terms of the financial elements? So there's three parts to what I'm going to be getting into today. The first is your motivation. I'm going to talk about different motivations of owners doing remodeling businesses. Just like I think we're all different human beings, homeowners and growth of a business, we're not all created equal and we're all different from each other. The second thing I'm going to talk about is how do you think about growth? How do you define growth as it relates to your business? And then the third thing that we'll get into a little bit more deeply is I've developed these 10 themes that we're going to be talking about, and I'll unpack them because you need to think about how to grow the business in terms of like, what are those filters that I need to think about to be able to grow a successful business? So with that being said, let me start with this whole notion of motivations. Coming from a kind of a world that I was able to kind of grab a hold of a business that was very, very small, and we added different divisions to the company. We grew it to, when I stepped down as president, just shy of $100 million in the remodeling business. Now, for many people, that altitude is not even something that you're even interested in and conceiving. But what was interesting in that process is I realized that what I was motivated for was really different than many of the other businesses out there. So there's really 7 motivations I'm going to talk about. And the reality, just like in everything in life, you're kind of a combination of these. It's not one or the other, but I hope at least it kind of resonates for you. The first is that you're just happy to have a job. Now, in this market, obviously it's a little different than normalized times. However, many people got into the remodeling business because they lost a job. And they woke up and they said, gosh, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? Well, maybe I'll start a little remodeling company. Maybe I'll do some work for my family or friends. And then a month, 6 months later, the quicksand was up to their waist and they looked at each other and they said, God, we're in the remodeling business, aren't we? You're just happy that you can control your own destiny and you have a job. The second one, which is really a motivation that I think was more from where we came from and I came from, is a real motivation to grow something that was kind of bigger than you. And that was grow a business. And when you grow a business, it's very much about your client base. It's very much about the technologies. It's very much about how am I growing and creating opportunities for a team. That was my real motivation in growing the business, more than it was just about profitability, or certainly more than just keeping people busy at work. The third is you're an investor. Now, I don't mean an investor like a Wall Street investor. I'm thinking the way you want to grow a business is really all about making money. And I think for many people, they think of the business as that vehicle to be able to get a good return on investment. But I think some really are much, much more focused on the business as an investment than as a business that's a home for your people or just having a job. Matter of fact, there's a fella in Southern California. He refers to his salespeople as racehorses. And the racehorses that are running well, they get the oats. He truly believes that in that notion that this is an investment. And if I'm not seeing a good return on investment, then I'm really not being successful in growing it. The fourth is more of an entrepreneurial kind of spirit. I think many of us are focused more on innovation and entrepreneurial. It's an opportunity to grow and do innovative things, creative things. And I think that many of us are cut from that, I think, tree as well. And that's a motivation, I think, for many, many owners. There's a few others out there that you may not be quite as obvious. One is ego. A lot of home remodelers have fairly large egos, and maybe there's someone in the room here that might. I have a friend that actually is more interested in being on the cover of a magazine than he is on making a profit. Now, I'm not here to judge him. What I am here to say is your motivation may have an element of ego involved more so than some of the other traditional kind of thinking. The next one is you're more of an evangelist. There are a lot of, I think, important causes as it relates to aging in place, as it relates to energy-related things. And your real motivation, I think, in growing a business is just make this world a better place. And your vehicle to be able to do that is, in fact, your business. And then the last, but certainly not least, is a legacy. There are many, many folks out there that really want to create not only a legacy in terms of their family within their business, but they also want to create a legacy for their team. There's a friend of mine in California that actually said, as an owner who is making that transition, and I said, what is it that really motivates you? And he said, my son's welfare. He's more interested in his family's welfare as it relates to the business than necessarily profitability or ego or certainly the innovative parts of it. So what I would encourage in this is look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, ask your key team members, what's the motivation here? Why are you doing this? Because I think the more clarity that you have in terms of what you're trying to do, then you can position the business in the right way for growth. So let's define growth a little bit. Just like when it comes to motivation, there's a lot of different ways to define growth within a business. It's not all the same thing. It's not all about the money. So one is, it's your top line sales. That's a way to see the incremental growth within your business. The second is your market share. In home improvement, it's a little bit different in that we have very, very small market shares. Matter of fact, we were, as Liza said, one of the largest in the country. I had my team actually cut and slice our market share in the Washington, D.C. area, and it was less than 1%. This is not a business that you're going to have double-digit market share, but for some businesses, say like Lowe's or Home Depot or others, market share is in fact just as important as anything else. A third is certainly profit. What's your return on this? What's your net profit on this business that you can certainly set aside? Another is your client base. I know when we launched the small projects or handyman services, we went from the early 90s to having about 2,000 clients to by 1996 having 25,000 clients. Wow, think about that for a minute. I didn't lose any sleep at night knowing I had 25,000 paying clients. It was more about how did we need to service and take care of and nurture and develop new products for those clients. I share that because that's another way to define growth. When I'm working with some companies who start small project divisions, different kind of things, I say, this is not necessarily a kind of holy grail in terms of profit, but it could be in terms of creating client base, which then could feed you certainly for the rest of your life. Another way to define growth is how you diversify. If you really think about, there's a lot of peaks and valleys historically in this business. We've been experiencing recently a lot of peaks, but trust me, there's probably a valley that's coming at some point over the course of the next coming years. So diversification is in fact how you position and create more sustainability, I think, for your business. Those businesses, as they get bigger and bigger, want to have more of a balanced portfolio in terms of the services of their business. Another way to think about growth is your brand. Obviously, if you have a much stronger brand, a brand name, a brand in your community, then it's gonna be much easier, especially in the difficult times, I think, to be able to grow and get better. And then the last one in terms of, I think this is a notion of, and we talked about it yesterday, is position yourself with more authority. You know, many remodelers out there consider themselves expert, but are you really an authority? Are you having that kind of level of status? And that's another, I think, motivation in terms of how you define growth is your authority status within your niche or your market. So with that being said, first step again is defining a little bit more what your motivations are. The next step is figuring out, okay, what do we want to define, or how do we define growth in a business? And like everything, it's a blend of these things, but it is going to be different from business to business. And then the next thing that we want to focus on is how to go about doing it. So what I want to do is I want to talk about these themes. And as you think about it, I'm using kind of these literally as themes to grow by. And if you think about it, they're like almost jigsaw puzzles that come together in pieces, and collectively they help you position the business and your team to be able to row and certainly achieve the level of growth you want. So the first theme that we developed within our business was people are your greatest assets. And most people that I talk about that theme, I say, what's the most important word in that theme? And they'll say, people, of course. I say, well, not really. We all know that people are important, but the most important word in that is actually assets. The most important thing is you start to think about your people as assets and not necessarily just functions within the business. And the most important assets are where you are going to put most of your time and your energy. You want to see a return from those assets. Once you start to define your people in that kind of way, you're going to treat that helper with more reverence than you will the van he's driving. And I say that somewhat flippantly, but I talk to remodelers all the time, and I'm always amazed of how secondarily they think about their people compared to the other assets in the business. The second theme is you got to invest time to improve. You know, life and everything we're doing now is moving way too fast. You've got to take the time to really invest the time. Start to treat yourself as a leader within your business. Start to treat the business with the same degree of importance that you do your clients and your products and your services. I encourage everybody that's in a leadership type of role or in a sales or design role to start making appointments to yourself to actually improve. You know, and I will tell you, as one that tends to do that, it's actually pretty cool to have an appointment with yourself. You know, I've found that I actually enjoy my appointments with myself actually almost more than any other appointments. But you have to start to treat yourself with that degree of importance. And when you start to develop a culture that you have to invest the time and energy to improve, you're going to see the kind of returns that you want and the level of growth. The third is create clients and projects will follow. The reality is with homeowners out there, if you can be more client-centric than project-centric, you're going to be able to see healthy growth in your business. And you've got to extend these themes onto your people. Your people have to literally drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, when it comes to this. It's more important, I think, when you get a lead to treat it with the degree of reverence that it really deserves. That lead that you might get is either someone that shouldn't be doing business with you, someone that you should do business and you're going to close, or they should be a referral client because you created a wonderful experience for them. By adopting that theme within your people, I think you're going to see much better returns. 1 + 1 = 3. I mean, many of you have heard that. That means obviously synergy. And when you start living and breathing within your organization, the people within your company, by putting together design and production, you're going to create amazing things. When we launched our bath division in the mid-90s, I created a little think tank with production, design, and sales. Our production folks talked about one of the keys to doing this was we needed in production, before you actually handed us a design or a specification, we needed to know how to go about doing it. Pretty obvious statement. So we coined this little phrase, everything we did in this division had to be production proven. Production proven. But this would not have come about if we didn't believe in synergy, if we didn't believe that the putting together these parts within the business, these minds within the business, we were going to create a better result. Business is about the experience, not necessarily just about products. You know, I know many years ago, I was sitting at my desk and I was looking at some letters when people used to write letters, looking at some letters with past clients. And I happened to have 3 or 4 of them on my desk. One of them was from a client that she began the letter by saying, you know, since your team left, my dog is depressed. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. And she went on to say, yeah, at 12 o'clock every day, he had lunch with your carpenter, right? My dog's depressed. Or another letter I remember reading was from a mother, a single mother with 2 little kids. And all she did was praise the carpenter and the helper for shoveling the driveway so she could get off to daycare and get to work. You know, when you read this kind of stuff and you listen to your clients and you realize at the end of the day, it's your experience that you're creating for the client. It's that memory you're creating for the client. They're not thinking about the insulating value in the window or how well you did the crown molding. They're thinking about the relationship. Now, what's interesting about that, they didn't call you at the beginning because they were lonely. They called you because they wanted a remodeling project done. So what you have to do is kind of change the narrative a bit and have them realize that it is about that experience, I think, certainly in the course of it. So a few more themes I want to talk on. Another important theme is if you fail to plan, plan to fail. And that's not just a play on the words. It's really something you need to live by. You know, Norman Vincent Peale said, plan your day today, not yesterday, not tomorrow, then work your plan. You know, you have to develop a mindset and a philosophy within your business that's about the planning and having tools within your business to plan, not just do. And I think by taking the time to truly plan things out, you're going to see better results. Exceed expectations. Of all my themes, this is actually the shortest, but it's probably one of the hardest for remodelers to do. You know, your clients oftentimes are very controlling. They're oftentimes asking for things that you want to be a pleaser and say yes. You know, saying no gracefully to a client might be the best thing that you could ever do. You know, think about a scenario just for a minute. A client, you're out there doing a project, day one, you've done all the demolition and you're starting to pour the footings and it just seems like you're doing amazing progress for that particular client. So the client comes out and they say, gosh, to the carpenter, based on the fact that you're doing so fast on this, it seems like you might be done early. Matter of fact, I have some friends coming over this weekend. It would be great if we were done by this weekend. And the carpenter, being a pleaser, saying, yeah, we'll do the best we can. Yeah, and I think the way things are going along, we might be able to do that. So play this forward for a minute. The carpenter, if he would have just said at the time, our original date is for a week and a half, he could have actually set a stage for exceeding rather than falling short on the expectation. So Friday, it's not done. Saturday, the dinner party with their friends. What are the friends saying about the contractor at that point? Nice people, but you know, contractors, they never finish on time, even though they set the stage. So what you need to do with your team members is you need to give them some courage to hold their ground and to set the stage that you're always exceeding the expectation and not falling short. Owning the communication. One of the themes, and by the way, I brought a couple of books here that I'm happy to give out. One of the themes in the book is it's our obligation to communicate, not others' responsibility to understand. The most important element of that particular theme is who owns the communication. You know, in home remodeling, 9 problems out of 10 are miscommunication. As of today, put the stake in the sand, and everything you communicate, you own it. Not the client. We don't want to hear the client didn't understand it. That's your fault, not their fault. And when you change that within your organization, if everyone in your organization realize I have to own my communication, you're going to see the amount of miscommunication go down and the level of certainly client satisfaction and happiness go up. Aggressive but realistic. Aggressive but realistic is a theme about pace in business. Pace in business. What is the right cadence? What's the right pace as you're moving forward with the projects and with initiatives you're starting to change? You know, even with the technologies you're integrating into the business, that takes time, and you have to be patient to bring those things to bear. So by adopting a theme, aggressive but realistic, it gives you a way to talk about and communicate pace. So when a project manager would come to me, for example, years ago and say, Mark, we're going to be done by Friday. I say, great. Is that aggressive but realistic? He could either say yes, he could say no, it's going to be next Monday, or he could say, you know, if we really push, we'll be done by Wednesday. Everybody needs to think about what is the right cadence, what's the right pace in our business, and aggressive but realistic. And the last one here, and certainly not the least, is how do you define success? Quite frankly, many years ago, I was tired of people giving high fives when we had profitability on a project, but it took twice as long to do it, and the client wasn't happy. They thought success was all about profitability. Or reversely, when the client gave them a hug and we weren't on time, they thought it was. So we created a simple little formula. Defining success is on time plus on budget plus delighted client equals success. So we would train our organization and our individuals, this is what success means in our business. And then you're not allowed to say that this is successful unless you could check off all those boxes. But the bottom line is, I think with this and all the different themes, it's all about creating alignment. It's all about having kind of everyone kind of rowing together and singing consistently off the page of music. And if you can get that level of momentum, you're not only seeing a lot of growth, but you're also going to see, I think, people enjoying the journey along the way. So let me just summarize. If you're not growing, you're going to go backward. It's just like your investment advisor saying, you know, if you don't invest in this, just because of inflation, you're going to go backward on things. And you're not changing, you'll become irrelevant. I remember when I heard someone say that to me about 15 years ago. You know, if a business is not changing, it'll become irrelevant. I just felt a chill at the time because that's the ultimate insult. It's an insult to your clients to become irrelevant. It's an insult to your team. And quite frankly, look in the mirror, it's an insult to yourself. You've got to adjust and change or become irrelevant. Growth means different things to different people, you know, including your personal fulfillment. So what you have to do is you have to define your own motivation and you have to define growth for yourself. You know, of 10 different remodeling companies, I can tell you, there's a lot of different variations and dialects of the theme. Yes, you want consistent processes of how you do things, but there's a lot of differences. And then the last one here is the motivation really differs. You know, you've got to know yourself if you're going to have the right path. And if you know yourself, know how you're defining growth, the likelihood of success is so much greater. So again, I have some books that I brought. I've written several books, business-related books. One is focused on how fit is your business, and it kind of takes you through a little fitness checkup, kind of like going to the doctor and getting your blood pressure checked. I do that within that book. The second is on the things you've heard today, the Fit to Grow and the business themes. And then the third is on the art of time mastery. You know, the most successful people I find, successful business, are also very, very masterful of time. So I wrote a book on that as well. So any questions? Hi, Chris. Any questions for me today? Excellent.
So you said you're not growing, you're going backwards. Like, any examples you can give, or some of the businesses that you work with now, what are what are the steps they take to go forward? What does it really mean to do that or go backwards? Like, does it have to be this overwhelming thing? How do you do it, step by step?
Yeah, that's a great question. Matter of fact, one of the things I oftentimes talk about to individuals in group is what is the right pace of growth in a business. And I really believe in normalized times, and these are a little bit of go-go times we're in right now, big tailwind that's going on, everybody knows about it. But in normalized times, if you're at a 0 to 5% growth, you're actually, I think, going backward in this business. And I say that not just because of your product, I say it because of your client base, but I also say it because of your team. At that level of growth, you're not creating opportunities for your team. And your team is not going to stay with you, the good ones, unless you create opportunities. 5 to 10% growth is a nice amount of growth, but quite frankly, it's not that exciting. I think the sweet spot in normalized time for most remodeling businesses is somewhere between 10 and 20% growth. That's the sweet spot. You can see profitability being very nice at that point. You can see people being inspired. You can gain market share with that level of growth. Now, you get up to 30, 40% growth, and many people are a little giddy when they tell me they've just grown 30%, and I get nervous. I get nervous because that's when it grows out of control. It's sort of like, imagine a teenager that plays basketball, let's say, and over the course of their freshman to sophomore year, they grow 6 inches, right? Just in that summer. They're uncoordinated. They're not necessarily nearly as skillful. Matter of fact, the fella I grew up with, that was the case, and it was not until his senior year that he made it on first string on the team again. So it's important that you have the right level of pace when it comes to growth. So to Liza's question in terms of some things to do, I think the first thing that you have to do, just like I've talked about today, you got to understand. But a couple of key things in the business, try not to always chase shiny objects. There's way too many opportunities out there today. One of the big mistakes I think businesses have is they're out there chasing shiny objects. So a question I oftentimes get is, why do businesses struggle and fail? And there's really 3 things. One is focus. They don't have enough focus in terms of the task at hand, whether it's related to the technologies, the products, the service. The second is commitment. Sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge with partners in businesses, that the commitment is not always the same. And the third is capital. And capital is sometimes money, but it's also the amount of energy that you're putting into it. So by focusing on the focus, the commitment, and the capital, you're likely to not only not fail, but be able to position yourself better for growth.
Okay. What's an example of how a business becomes irrelevant? Is it not using technology? Is it how they manage their team? What are some of the things that you've seen?
Yeah, I think the whole element of technology is so important today when it comes to the business. I really believe in kind of the balance between the high tech and the high touch. We really, I think, have seen that pendulum kind of swing. 10, 20 years ago, I think you could literally give me kind of a crayon and a back of a napkin and I could kind of do this business. Now you really look down upon, I think, when it comes to the client and even your team. You're not going to be a magnet for talent if you don't have the right technologies that you're leveraging in your team. Many of the things I'm seeing as I'm listening to not only younger generation, but just talented people, they want to work with very technology driven or high acumen in terms of the tools when it comes to the technologies. So I think by positioning yourself in terms of that, by constantly creating the right kind of culture within your business, I think you'll be much better positioned for growth.